Imagine that your words were like gold coins. Every time you speak, you spend one. Some words buy happiness, while others bring chaos. Now think, how many coins have you wasted today? We live in a world dominated by noise, and social media pushes us to share without thinking. But God reminds us of something crucial: the power of silence. Proverbs 21:23 says, "Whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from troubles." Talking too much can lead us into problems, but silence is a powerful tool of protection and wisdom. Today we will explore the biblical secrets about the power of words and even more about the value of silence. What you are about to discover may forever change the way you communicate and pursue your dreams. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting and transformative content. Intimacy with God and its rewards. In the Gospel of Matthew 6:6, Christ teaches us the true value of praying in secret. He invites us to seek God in an intimate place, far from distractions and judging eyes. This space of deep spiritual connection is where we find God's true presence without having to prove anything to anyone. Think about how often we worry about appearing spiritual to others, when in fact it is in the silence of our room, in sincere prayer, that true spiritual strength manifests. Intimacy with God is not about showing off, but about sincerity. When we pray in secret without seeking the approval of men, we are exercising full trust that God, who sees everything we do in secret, will reward us openly. This act of praying away from the spotlight is an example of spiritual maturity that reflects the true motivation of someone seeking communion with the Father. Many times we want our actions to be seen and recognized, but the path of faith is knowing that God sees us even when no one else does. If you stop to reflect, you will realize that the greatest blessings in your life came during moments of silent and sincere prayer when no one knew. The secret to living in peace with God and others is finding that place of deep communion where the connection with the divine is not tainted by the need for external approval. A practical example of this is starting your day with a quiet moment with God, praying in silence before facing the world. This can completely change your perspective and give you strength to face daily challenges. The silence that Jesus recommends in this verse is more than just the absence of words. It represents total surrender, where we yield to God's will and let Him guide our steps. How many times do we speak too much in prayer but forget to listen to God's voice? Silence in prayer allows divine wisdom to reveal itself in our hearts. It brings us discernment and serenity, especially when we are surrounded by conflicts or challenges. By connecting with God in this secret space, we learn to trust His plans. Many times we don't see immediate results, but Christ's promise is clear. God rewards those who sincerely approach Him. Prayer is not about well-constructed words, but about a heart willing to listen and obey. Imagine the peace that comes from this practice of praying in secret, knowing that God will take care of every detail, even those we cannot see. This type of intimacy also teaches us to trust in God above the opinions of others. What He sees in secret, He rewards publicly. So instead of seeking recognition on social media or among friends, why not seek recognition in God's eyes, the one who knows every thought and every plan of our heart? This is true success, a success that does not depend on human approval, but on divine approval that bears eternal fruit. This prepares us for the next step of our spiritual journey, where we will learn to use wisdom in our words and in silence. Listening, speaking, and feeling with wisdom. James 1:19 gives us advice that seems simple but requires much wisdom to put into practice. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Listening is an art that few master, but it can completely transform our relationships. Imagine how much more peaceful our interactions would be if everyone was more willing to listen than to speak. When we listen attentively, we create space for understanding, and that is the first step to resolving conflicts. How many times in the heat of an argument have we regretted saying things without thinking? James teaches us that the secret lies in controlling the tongue, in being slow to speak. Prudence in speaking is a gift we need to cultivate because words spoken carelessly can have disastrous consequences. A practical exercise here is to pause before responding to someone and reflect. Will what I say build up or tear down? Wisdom lies in responding calmly after considering the possible consequences. Besides listening and speaking with wisdom, James reminds us to be slow to anger. Anger, when fed, can become an emotional fire that is difficult to control. When we give space to anger, we allow our judgment to be clouded, and we make decisions we may regret. Think of a recent situation where you got angry quickly. How could things have been different if you had controlled your emotions and let patience prevail? Emotional self-control is not an easy task, but it is essential to live in peace with others and with ourselves. A practical way to exercise this is when you feel anger approaching. Step away for a few minutes, take a deep breath, and seek a moment of prayer. This simple act of silencing emotions can prevent many conflicts and bring peace to the heart. Jesus gives us the ultimate example of self-control. Even in extreme situations, he never let anger dictate his actions. Knowing how to listen, speak, and control anger is also a sign of spiritual maturity. James calls us to reflect. Are we acting with the patience and wisdom that God asks of us? Human relationships are challenging, but with divine help, we can avoid misunderstandings and build deeper and more meaningful bonds. It is in the practice of everyday conversations that this wisdom manifests. The next time someone provokes or irritates you, remember these words and see how your response can change the course of things. As we embrace this wisdom in our daily lives, we also begin to see the rewards: fewer conflicts, more inner peace, and healthier relationships. Silence and reflection before speaking lead us to a life of greater discernment. This way, we are able to avoid rash decisions and poorly chosen words. And this wisdom prepares us to better understand the power that our words have, which will be explored in the next step of our spiritual journey. The power of words and the wisdom of silence. In Psalm 141:3, the psalmist pleads with God to set a guard over his mouth. This simple prayer reveals a deep truth: the difficulty we have in controlling our words. How many times, in moments of frustration or anger, do we say things we shouldn't and later regret it? Words have extraordinary power. They can build up or tear down, and that's why we need to ask for divine wisdom to guide what comes out of our mouths. God gives us the ability to discern when to speak and, perhaps more importantly, when to remain silent. When we speak without thinking, we risk causing deep wounds to those who hear us. A poorly chosen word can break relationships that took years to build. That is why it is essential to develop the ability to think before expressing ourselves. The wisdom of silence, as the psalmist teaches us, is a gift to be cultivated. A simple practice to exercise this control is to offer a silent prayer before responding in tense situations, asking God to guard your lips. This brief pause can prevent harsh words and bring serenity to the conversation. By asking God to guard our words, we acknowledge our human limitation and our tendency to make mistakes. It is not weakness to remain silent. On the contrary, it is a demonstration of strength and self-control. Think about the last time you said something thoughtless and regretted it. Now imagine if at that moment you had asked God to guide your response. How different could things have been? This daily exercise of self-control can transform the way we communicate, making our words more prudent and constructive. Silence is not just the absence of words, but also an attitude of humility. When we choose not to respond in the heat of the moment, we demonstrate spiritual and emotional maturity. We know that by remaining silent, we are avoiding disastrous consequences. The psalmist's prayer is a constant reminder that control of the tongue does not come solely from our own willpower, but from our dependence on God. He is the source of all wisdom, and only with his help can we curb our impulsiveness. It is also important to remember that silence gives us the opportunity to listen better, to understand situations before reacting. Jesus often chose silence in the face of accusations, showing that not every provocation deserves an immediate response. In our daily lives, we can follow this example. When someone offends or criticizes us, perhaps the best response is silence, accompanied by a prayer asking for discernment on the right moment to speak. This can preserve our peace and avoid unnecessary conflicts. This understanding of the power of words prepares us for the next step, learning to protect our soul through the control of what we say. Silence can be the key to avoiding great anxieties and emotional disasters, something we will explore further ahead. Protecting the soul through words. Proverbs 21:23 teaches us that whoever guards his mouth and tongue preserves his soul from troubles. This shows us the immense power that words have in influencing our emotional and spiritual well-being. Many times, by speaking carelessly, we get involved in situations of chaos and destruction that could easily have been avoided with silence. Therefore, controlling the tongue is a way to protect not only our relationships, but also our inner peace. The reflection here is simple. Do our words bring us closer to or distance us from the peace we seek? Speaking impulsively in moments of tension can create fires that quickly spiral out of our control. Like a fire that starts with a small spark, a thoughtless word can grow until it consumes everything around us. In heated arguments, for example, how often do we feel tempted to respond in the same tone? But silence in such moments can be the wisest strategy. It allows us to think clearly without being swept away by the emotions of the moment. When we practice this self-control, we avoid misunderstandings and future regrets. Guarding our words is an exercise in patience and prudence. Just as we protect a treasure, we must guard our tongue, for it has the power to determine the course of our lives. A wise person knows when to speak and when to be silent, understanding that often silence is more powerful than any speech. The practice of holding back words in moments of anger or frustration is a sign of spiritual maturity. By doing this, you protect your soul from the pain and anguish that hasty words can bring. This control over what we say also directly affects our relationships. When we speak with wisdom, we build bridges, but when we speak recklessly, we raise walls. In daily interactions, how often do poorly chosen words create barriers? If you are in a moment of conflict with someone, why not try silence for a while? This pause may be the path to restoring peace and preventing the situation from escalating. This doesn't mean we should always remain silent, but rather that we should speak at the right time with discernment. Moreover, the ability to restrain the tongue also protects us from ourselves. Many times we are our own worst enemies, feeding destructive thoughts and words that affect our own mental health. When we commit to guarding our mouth, we avoid falling into emotional traps that can lead to sadness and despair. A practical example is avoiding gossip or negative comments about others, something that can poison our soul and our relationships. This proverb prepares us to better understand the power silence has in preserving our knowledge and protecting our reputation. Knowing when to speak and when to remain silent is an essential strategy for those seeking a life of success and peace. In the next step, we will dive deeper into this wisdom. The power of silence. Proverbs 12:23 teaches us that a prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims foolishness. This ancient wisdom shows us that silence can be a powerful strategy. The wise, by keeping what they know to themselves, strengthens their position and increases their chances of success. Just like in a game of chess where every move is carefully thought out, silence can be a form of protection. Those who know when to speak and when to be silent avoid many problems and place themselves in a position of advantage. Many times we are tempted to say everything we know, as if exposing our knowledge were the best way to be recognized. However, strategic silence gives us time to observe, reflect, and act wisely. Think of how many times you've seen someone lose a great opportunity by speaking too much or sharing information before the right time. The prudent know that not everything should be said and that guarding certain words is essential to protect plans and avoid unnecessary criticism. This teaching is valuable, especially in the modern world, where we are encouraged to share everything all the time. Social media, for example, incites us to expose our lives and thoughts without considering the consequences. The wise, however, know that not everything should be published, that some things are too precious to be shared with the world. Guarding what is important and avoiding speaking what is irrelevant protects us from hasty judgments and criticism that can shake our confidence. Silence, therefore, can be a powerful tool for preserving our inner peace. When we choose not to respond to provocations or avoid impulsive comments, we are protecting not only our reputation, but also our tranquility. Many times, a word said in the heat of the moment can bring conflicts that take years to resolve. If you found yourself in such situations, perhaps it's time to adopt the strategy of silence in tense situations, allowing time and reflection to bring the solution. Furthermore, silence also allows us to listen better. When we speak too much, we lose the opportunity to learn from others and from the situations around us. The prudent man knows that knowledge is guarded cautiously, not exposed at any moment. By remaining silent, we have the chance to observe and learn, absorbing lessons that can guide us in future moments. It's a constant exercise of self-control, but the rewards are clear: more wisdom, fewer conflicts, and a more balanced life. This wise silence also prepares us to understand how self-control can be a tool of protection against mistakes. In the next step, we will explore how even a fool can be considered wise when opting for silence in difficult situations. Silence as a strategy for wisdom. Proverbs 17:28 teaches us that even a fool, when he holds his peace, is considered wise. This statement reveals the immense value of silence as a strategy for wisdom. When we choose not to speak in moments of tension or uncertainty, we avoid mistakes that can have irreversible consequences. Silence allows us to observe more clearly, reflect on our actions, and avoid rash judgments. Instead of reacting impulsively, the wise observe and wait for the right moment to act. This is one of the keys to success in relationships and the decisions we make daily. Many times, we feel the need to respond quickly, whether in arguments or pressure situations. However, silence may be our best defense. Think of how words can be like arrows. Once launched, there is no turning back. Have you ever been in situations where you wish you hadn't spoken? Silence in those moments could have avoided wear and tear, regrets, and even ruptures in relationships. It is a constant exercise of spiritual and emotional maturity. Silence also offers us the opportunity to better understand what is happening around us. It gives us time to analyze situations and perceive nuances that, amidst the noise, could go unnoticed. It's like a general who, before going into battle, calmly observes the terrain, calculating every move. Instead of reacting hastily, the wise wait for the right moment to speak, knowing that one word at the right time has more impact than 1,000 spoken without reflection. In conflict situations, for example, silence can be a tool for emotional disarmament. When we choose not to immediately respond to a provocation, we demonstrate self-control and wisdom. A practical example would be in family discussions or at work. Instead of engaging in a heated exchange of words, opting for silence and reflection can avoid escalating tensions. This doesn't mean we should always remain silent, but rather that we should carefully choose our battles and words. The self-control evidenced in silence is a demonstration of true wisdom and understanding. Wise people, unlike fools, do not feel the need to prove anything to anyone with their words. They know that silence often speaks louder than any speech. This practice of guarding the tongue protects us from making mistakes, whether small or large, that could affect our reputation, relationships, and inner peace. Furthermore, It allows us to listen more to God and less to ourselves, and so by practicing wise silence, we open space for reflection and spiritual growth. In the next step, we will explore how words have the power to sow both life and death, and how this truth can shape our communication with the world around us. The tongue that sows life and death. Proverbs 18:21 reveals a powerful truth. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. Every word we speak has the potential to build up or destroy, to bring blessings or curses. It is a tremendous responsibility that we often do not consider. Imagine the impact your words have on a daily basis, whether in a simple conversation or in an important decision-making moment. Like gardeners, we sow seeds with every word we speak, and the fruits we harvest, whether good or bad, are a direct consequence of this. The words we sow in our relationships can build bridges or erect walls. Think of a recent disagreement. How could your words have changed the course of the situation if, instead of speaking in the heat of the moment, you had chosen words of peace? Perhaps the result would have been completely different. It is important to keep in mind that just as kind words can heal wounded hearts, harsh words can cause irreparable damage. The power of life and death lies precisely in this, choosing between healing or hurting, building or destroying. This truth also applies to ourselves. How many times have we used negative words about our own lives, undermining our confidence and potential? Words of discouragement and constant criticism can poison us from within, while words of encouragement and affirmation strengthen us. Imagine starting the day not with complaints, but with a prayer asking God for wisdom in the words you say, both to others and to yourself. This habit can transform your perception of life and bring more peace and success. In the family environment, for example, the words we use with our children, spouses, or parents have a profound and lasting impact. A sincere compliment can strengthen bonds and build relationships, while constant criticism can generate resentment and distance. Think about it. What would happen if instead of criticism, you chose words of gratitude and appreciation? This change in attitude can transform not only your relationships, but also the environment in which you live, making it more harmonious and full of peace. In a spiritual context, what we say also reflects our faith. Jesus said that the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. So if our words are full of life, hope, and love, we are sowing God's kingdom around us. On the other hand, if our speech is always filled with negativity, it may be drawing us away from the divine peace we so desire. The challenge is to use our words to sow life, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of others, as Jesus taught us. And so, by recognizing the immense power that our words possess, we begin to understand the importance of guarding our tongue with wisdom. In the next step, we will explore how controlling our words can save us from great problems and preserve our inner peace. Control of words and its consequences. Proverbs 13:3 warns us that whoever guards his mouth preserves his life, but whoever opens wide his lips shall have destruction. This lesson teaches us that words are like doors we can open or close for our own good. Once we say something, there is no turning back, and the impact of our words goes beyond the moment they are spoken. Think about how a simple word spoken carelessly can destroy relationships, ruin opportunities, and create storms where there was once serenity. The lack of control over what we say can have serious consequences, both for us and for those around us. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where by talking too much, you ended up revealing something you shouldn't have, or said something in the heat of the moment that led to deep regrets? Guarding our words is like dropping an anchor in the middle of a storm, bringing stability and clarity even in situations of conflict or pressure. When we speak less and listen more, we have the chance to reflect before making hasty decisions. Moreover, the power to control our mouth goes beyond avoiding momentary problems. It also reflects our ability to discern and ponder. Words have a domino effect. What we say today can echo for days, months, or even years. Imagine how different your life could be if you had controlled your mouth in specific situations from the past. By adopting this posture of greater prudence, we protect not only our reputation, but also our relationships and inner peace. In work situations, for example, control of words can be crucial to success or failure. In an important meeting, talking too much can reveal plans that should have been kept secret, or even create a wrong impression about your competence. On the other hand, speaking wisely and at the right moment can open doors, generate respect, and strengthen your position. The wise know that strategic silence and thoughtful speech are powerful tools for building a path of success. But this practice is also essential in our spiritual life. Jesus teaches us to be humble, and humility often manifests in the control of the tongue. By restraining our words, we give space for God to act in our lives and avoid letting chaos take over our hearts. Silence combined with prayer is a tool of protection against the snares of pride and impulsiveness. This way, we can live a life of greater serenity and balance without being swept away by our own words. This mastery over what we say prepares us to better understand the balance between speaking and remaining silent. In the next step, we will see how to discern the right moment to speak and the right moment to remain silent, one of the greatest signs of wisdom we can achieve. The times to be silent and to speak. In Ecclesiastes 3:7, we are reminded that there is a time for everything, including a time to speak and a time to be silent. Discernment of these moments is one of the greatest forms of wisdom we can acquire. It is not always easy, but learning to distinguish when we should express ourselves and when we should hold back can prevent many conflicts and regrets. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any word, and knowing when to use it protects us from rash decisions and helps us preserve peace in our lives. Knowing when to remain silent in moments of tension is a true demonstration of self-control and maturity. Think of how many times you have regretted speaking in a situation where silence would have been wiser. In heated arguments, for example, instinct often pushes us to respond immediately. But silence in such cases can be the key to avoiding an escalation of emotions and opening space for a more considered solution. This time of silence can bring clarity and prevent us from speaking in the heat of the moment. However, there is also a right time to speak. There are situations where silence can be misinterpreted as indifference or a lack of stance. Knowing when to raise our voice in defense of truth or to correct an injustice is equally important. The challenge is to find the balance between speaking and remaining silent, something that is only possible through reflection and wisdom. In a work environment, for example, speaking at the right time can ensure that an idea is heard and valued, while speaking at the wrong time can result in misunderstandings or rejection. Silence, on the other hand, can be an act of protection. When we choose not to respond to an offense, for example, we are protecting ourselves from a possible impulsive reaction and preserving our inner peace. A practical example would be in family conflicts. Instead of retaliating in an argument, choosing silence and prayer can pave the way for future reconciliation instead of deepening the wounds. In this context, silence becomes a powerful tool for healing and reflection. Understanding the times to speak and to remain silent also reflects our connection with God. When we are in tune with His wisdom, we can better discern these situations. Asking for divine guidance on when to speak and when to remain silent is a practice that brings us more balance and serenity. After all, wisdom is not only in the words we say, but also in those we choose to withhold. This discernment helps us preserve relationships, avoid conflicts, and live with more harmony. Understanding this dynamic between speaking and remaining silent prepares us to understand the power of silence in avoiding sin. In the next step, we will see how silence can be a tool for restraining sin and maintaining prudence in our lives. Avoiding sin with the power of silence. Proverbs 10:19 teaches us that the more we talk, the greater the risk of sinning. It is a clear warning about the danger of excessive words. When we talk too much, we inevitably get involved in careless conversations, gossip, or even lies. Restraining the tongue, therefore, is not a sign of weakness but of wisdom. The ability to control what we say protects us from falling into traps we ourselves create. Silence, when well used, is a powerful tool of protection against sin. Imagine a common situation where the conversation escalates, and without realizing it, we end up saying something we regret. An ill-timed joke, an exaggerated criticism, or even a lie to maintain appearances. This happens more often than we would like to admit. The self-control of restraining the tongue, especially in these moments, can save us from many regrets and preserve our inner peace. Before speaking, we should ask ourselves, does this really need to be said? Will this build up or tear down? Silence is also a way to distance ourselves from the temptation to gossip or criticize. Often in work environments or casual conversations, we are tempted to get involved in discussions about others' lives. The danger is that these conversations quickly become destructive and can harm both those we talk about and ourselves. Controlling the tongue in such moments is a demonstration of prudence. Instead of participating in gossip, why not choose silence or change the subject to something more constructive? This can prevent conflicts and preserve your reputation. In addition to avoiding sins like gossip or lying, restraining our words also helps us maintain prudence in moments of anger or frustration. How many times in the heat of an argument have we said things we shouldn't have, only to regret them shortly after? Wisdom lies in not letting emotions dominate our words. When we feel that we are on the verge of losing control, silence can be the wisest response. It gives us time to breathe, reflect, and regain emotional balance. Another important lesson from this verse is that prudence in speech allows us to reflect before acting. When we speak less, we have more time to ponder our actions and the possible consequences of our words. This helps us avoid hasty decisions and build a more balanced and harmonious life. Remember, silence is not an absence of participation, but a strategy of wisdom that preserves our soul and our character. By adopting the habit of speaking less and listening more, we open space for divine wisdom to guide our actions. And this control of the tongue is fundamental to living in peace with others and with ourselves. Now, understanding the power of restraining the tongue, we are ready to conclude this journey of learning about the transformative power of words and silence. Life is full of choices, and the way we speak is one of the most important choices we can make. How about starting today to apply this knowledge? Be more careful with what you say, practice silence at the right moments, and see how this can positively impact your life. Leave in the comments what you thought of this content and how you intend to use the power of words and silence in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving teachings that can transform your life.